Yeah, see? Told you. I got 2. And continuing with our trend, we're gonna open number 2 today. Yeah, so these are actually gonna be put up on Monday. That would be tomorrow by the time this video comes out. So we'll probably do some stupid intro on these. Of course, these whiteboards are brought to you by viewers just like you. If you'd like to make a donation to your nearest public broadcasting station, call the number at the bottom of the screen. It'll be right there. You should call it. Or whatever. What is going on, guys? So today we are back with another video. We're diving deeper into the Rainbow Cup, and today we're actually doing a versus video, kind of piggybacking off of yesterday's video. I kind of talked a little bit about how today would be a video on Exeggcute and Exeggutor. So we're going to start with some stats and kind of just go over some general topics between Exeggcute and Exeggutor, and then we're going to go over our moveset. And very similar to yesterday's video, the moveset is just kind of chosen on the highest number of wins, with a small exception to Exeggutor, because with Solar Beam you do actually win the mirror, but you in turn end up losing to Kingdra rather than tying with Kingdra. So it's kind of like meh, but I ended up going with Psychic just simply because I'm not worried about the mirror as much as I am the other Pokemon outside of the mirror, and it just seemed more logical to go with that. But anyways, let's get into this. So, Exeggcute here with an attack of 107, a defense of 125, and a stamina of 155. I have to say, that is a great PvP spread if I have ever seen one there. A really low attack, a decent defense, and a really high HP stat is just whoo! Now, on the Exeggutor side, we do bump up to a whopping 233. A 149 on defense and a 216 on stamina there. Now, just to be upfront with you guys, I have done an Exeggutor deep dive. If you haven't seen it, I do highly encourage you to go watch that, as you will see a lot more in-depth analysis. I don't really want to call it that because I don't feel like that's what I actually do, but you'll see a lot more in-depth discussion on Exeggutor, more than you will see in this video, as this video is more of comparing these two Pokemon up against the meta. Now, according to my spreadsheet, Exeggcute actually should rank around 42nd in bulk with 86th in stat product, while Exeggutor is 79th in bulk, very far down there, and only 65th in stat product. So for the movesets that we're actually going with today, of course, confusion is the big deal. That's kind of what this entire weekend has been about, comparing the big four that are always talked about when it comes to the confusion. Definitely going to be running confusion there. We both do have Seed Bomb. Now the variance here is that Ancient Power is actually on Exeggcute, which was pretty cool. And then we have Psychic here. So, like I said, these movesets are chosen based on the number of wins that we actually have up against the meta. I tried to choose movesets that were not necessarily similar, but were their most strongest in the meta. So that way we can kind of get a real kind of situation on how these two Pokemon do. So I'm going to throw it up on the board here. We do have our spreadsheet, just like yesterday's video, with all of our meta Pokemon and our battle ratings. Now, just to kind of quickly go over how this stuff works, on PvPoke, whenever you battle a Pokemon, you have a battle rating usually associated with the exact stipulations that you actually put into that battle. So if it's a specific moveset, specific shield scenarios, specific stats and IVs, whatever, however far you take it, you have a battle rating. That battle rating, if it's above 500, it's a win for you. If it's below 500, it's a loss for you. So we'll actually just use this Azumarill as an example here. As you can see, with the Exeggcute, we have a battle rating of 384. With the Exeggutor, it is a 467, which means both of those Pokemon do lose, but we do have a better chance. We do actually take more away from that Azumarill because we have a higher battle rating with the Exeggutor. So, even though it's a loss, we're still going to give that point to Exeggutor here. Next we have the Beedrill, which as you can see, a 452 on Exeggcute, which does mean that we actually lose there, but the Exeggutor comes out with a 624. That means we're actually winning that one. So Beedrill is going to be a green for win, and we give that point to Exeggutor. Next we have the Blastoise, which is actually a tie up against the Exeggcute, but with the Exeggutor we actually do end up winning that one with a 565. So we'll go Blastoise here. Next we have the Charizard matchup, which is a pretty rough battle for both Pokemon here, but the Exeggutor actually inches out with a 455. So next, looking at the Exeggutor, as I said, we do tie in this matchup with Exeggutor ourselves, and the actual Exeggcute is a tie as well. It's just not even worth putting up here, to be honest. It's a tie on both Pokemon. Just, you can kind of assume that if you're using Exeggutor, you would basically trade in most scenarios. If it comes down to literally IV spread, then yeah, somebody's going to win and somebody's going to lose, but it'll be super close. Next, moving on to the Fortress. As you can see, Fortress is rough. It is a really rough matchup here, but Exeggutor actually does inch out just a tad bit better with that 132 versus the 124 on Exeggcute, so we'll give this point to Exeggutor here. Next, we have the Kingdra matchup, which is a tie for both Pokemon. And considering that we're going to trade, we're both going to faint, I am going to count that as a tie just in general. We're going to put that down here, considering that neither Pokemon should really get that point there. Next, moving on to the Lantern matchup, you can actually see that Lantern is a win for both Pokemon here, but Exeggutor actually just dominates when it comes to that battle rating, a 794 here, so give that one to Exeggutor as well. Then we have the Lapras matchup, which is pretty rough on both Pokemon, but actually this is where Exeggcute finally gets put on the board here. We do actually do better as the Exeggcute there. Next, moving on to the Magcargo matchup, as you can see, it is a win for both Pokemon, but actually Exeggcute pulls out here again. Next, we have our Magneton matchup, which is pretty bad here, but Exeggcute actually does inch out there with a 445, so even though it's a loss, we are doing better as the Exeggcute. Now moving into the Mantine, it's still a loss for both Pokemon there, but Exeggcute here does actually do a little bit better. Next, the Meganium matchup, which is actually a straight up loss for Exeggcute, but Exeggutor here actually does barely win with a 507. Then we have our Ninetales matchup, which is very rough on both Pokemon here, but actually Exeggutor does end up winning the actual trade-off here with a 402, but still a loss. Next, we have the Amistar matchup, which is a win for both Pokemon, not too surprising there, but Exeggcute actually takes over the Amistar matchup there. Next, with our Quagsire matchup, now this one is interesting. Quagsire with Mudshot, Acid Spray, and Stone Edge is a win for Exeggcute, but actually a loss for Exeggutor. Holy cow. Next, with the Raichu, it does look like we are good on both Pokemon, but Exeggcute actually pulls out ahead again here as well. Onto the Raikou, you can actually see Exeggute's losing pretty hard there, but Exeggutor can actually end up winning that one, so that's interesting. Then we move into the Slowbro. Yeah, that one's actually not too surprising. Exeggcute does have some problems. Actually ended up losing that one, but the Exeggutor actually ends up winning up against the Slowbro. Into the actual Slowpoke match here. We are actually winning with both Pokemon, but Exeggutor actually does do a lot better, so give that point over here. Next, with the Typhlosion, you can see Exeggcute having a lot of problems there, but Exeggutor actually able to pull that one out with a 531. So the Typhlosion. Coming up towards the end here, Venomoth is a win for both Pokemon, but Exeggutor here again does actually take the Venomoth. Then we have our Venusaur, which is kind of the entire point of running Confusion users here. Even though it's really close, Exeggutor actually is the preferred one here. And last but not least, we do actually have the Victory Bell here at the bottom, which surprisingly Exeggcute is the better choice to go up against the Victory Bell. So let's give that point over here. So here's the actual point of this entire video. The entire point is to kind of illustrate that both of these Pokemon can be used. Now, Exeggutor is going to be more widespread. It is going to cover more of the matchups, and it's going to do better in the matchups that are wins on both Pokemon. It does outperform Exeggcute in more matchups inside of the meta than Exeggcute will. So it kind of illustrates the fact that Exeggutor is probably the one that you want to go with, but there should be a case made that if these Pokemon are the ones that you need coverage for, Exeggcute makes more sense. Now, one thing to note is Kingdra is going to be a loss straight up for both Pokemon, so kind of need to have that covered, but that's... I trust you on that. You'll have that covered, right? So in the scenario where you need Quagsire to be covered, but let's say you already have the Beedrill, the Typhlosion, the Slowpoke, the Slowbro, and the Meganium covered, but you really need that Quagsire to be covered, and also you're worried about the Victreebel and the Amistar, it would make sense that Exeggcute may be a little bit better of a choice rather than Exeggutor. So kind of take that in, let that sink in for you if you've been debating on either Slowpoke and Slowbro or Exeggcute and Exeggutor. Hopefully this will kind of help drive home the idea behind using one over the other, because I mean, for sure Exeggutor is a lot cheaper. You don't have to power it up completely to level 40, which you do for the Exeggcute, but it's also legacy, so there is that problem. If you're going for a non-legacy, then it's probably just easier to go with either the Slowpoke or the Slowbro. And then at that point, it just kind of depends on which one you need coverage for. But it works in the same vein here. If you have the option to go with Exeggcute or Exeggutor, then it kind of depends on which one you're lacking coverage from. Now, if you want, I also like to think about this at times whenever I build a team. If you want to have multiple outs for Pokemon, like let's say if we actually compared Slowbro to Exeggutor, then you could actually sit down and look at all the similarities between those, and you could figure out which one of those they all cover, and then you could have multiple checks for different Pokemon inside the meta. You could have multiple hard counters inside the meta. That would just be crazy. So that is actually going to be it for today's video, guys. Thank you so much for hanging out. Thank you so much for watching. Like I said, these new pieces of equipment and these toys that I get are literally because of you guys. So I can't thank you guys enough. I will show you, it is a staggering 4:45 in the morning. I am just now finished recording this video, and I'm gonna edit it before I go to sleep. I have to be up and out of the house by 8 a.m. I don't know why I'm telling you this, but it's gotta happen. So anyways, thank you guys so much for hanging out. Thank you so much for watching. Always remember that if you like to like videos, you can do that, but if you don't, you can be that guy. Please do remember that if you have a deep dive that you're looking forward to, you can comment it down below. I can't really show you what's coming up next quite yet because I'm recording this as of Saturday morning at 4:45 in the freaking morning. But you know, if you have any ideas, toss them down and I'll put them in the spreadsheet and we'll get to them. But otherwise, thank you so much for watching, and until our next video, I will catch you then.